Welcome everyone. Today on the channel we're discussing printing with a 0.2mm nozzle. I've seen it all the rage lately about printing FDM miniatures using a 0.2 nozzle and getting great results. However, most of those people are using an A1 Bamboo Labs printer. Question is, can I use a 0.2 nozzle on an Ender 3 and still get good results? Let's jump into it and see.
For the minis I decided to print, I went with Atlan Forge Manus Mortis Gorebringers. These look like some really funky Plague Marine style minis. I really like the look of them. I like that they're chunky, but at the same time they've got little bits that are sticking off. That should be a really good test for the 0.2mm nozzle. So I downloaded the files and got to set them up in my slicer. Alright, before I get into more detailed minis, I like to just start with this Hooded Stranger mini, which is an FDM friendly mini free from Thingiverse. I will link it in the description of the video. But this doesn't have any overhangs, it's got some good detail. I've printed other versions of this on a 0.4mm nozzle, so I've got other parts to compare it against. And I decided to start on my printer Mave, which is an Ender 3. It is currently idle, and I figured if I could put a 0.2 nozzle on it, I had plenty of time to work and not have my shop compete with any parts for it. Unfortunately, we ran into some issues, which I will share shortly here.
So this is just one of the many failures I had with my Ender 3 EVA. As you can see, we had a lot of stringing here, and the detail doesn't look that bad, but it's just the stringing makes this an unusable part. It's just too much to clean up. Um, and I also had other prints with a lot of under extrusion, or I had lots of nozzle clogs, just all sorts of issues trying to run on my 3D printer Mave. It just wasn't a good choice for this. It'd been down idle for a reason, so I just was almost ready to give up on this, but realized I was been idle, so I should probably maybe try this on another machine. All right, so after all my failures with Mave, I decided to switch to my other printer, Eva, to see if I'd have better results with that.
Now, one complaint I do have about these models, and it's not really Atlan's Forge fault. I don't think that they build these as FDM friendly minis at all. Obviously, when they come in, this is how a model imported in. It's tilted at an angle. And when I'm trying to set this up for FDM printing, I'm trying to align some flat surfaces. So on things like the torso, I thought, hey, this bottom would be a great flat surface. I can just, click my align tool, align to this face, and it'll be a nice flat base here for me to start the print on. So if I slice it, take a look, go to my preview, and you can see down here the teeth are overhanging a little bit. So really the flat base of the mini doesn't start for a couple layers. So it's one of those things that you have to really look out for on some of these minis. Again, they're not designed for FDM, so I shouldn't expect some of these features, but just led to a struggle on a lot of the different features for these models, is trying to find a good flat spot to align. Um, Again, it's just something to keep in mind, is always check your preview, because I definitely started some of these without really looking at the detailed preview, just thinking I knew what I was doing, and ran into some hiccups here. This is a 0.4 nozzle with a 0.2 layer height, so that's why this looks so ugly here. But anyway, I did eventually get these set up and sliced. I sliced them differently for both the 0.4 and the 0.2, just due to some of the layer settings. I did have to tilt some of them and align some features a little bit differently. This is the finished parts off of Eva. This is the 0.4mm nozzle. Again, you've got some stringing and artifacts on the backs of parts and around these spikes. On the 0.2, the spikes turned out a little bit crisper, as well as the smokestacks, and there's a lot of little details that are just a little bit better on the 0.2 than they are on the 0.4. And what would a comparison be without a paint job? So I did a zenithal highlight on these, based in black with a white matte spray from overhead. And then I started off with Plague Bear's Flesh, which is a contrast paint from Citadel. Basically applied that to all the main armor bits and covered that and saturated it pretty well. Next up was a Wraithbone Flesh on the spikes. Those are just kind of an off-white bone color. So I'm just hitting all those little points, making sure I cover all the spikes and get all the spiky bits and anything else that's kind of bone colored, including any skulls or anything that are on there. Next up was lead belcher for the main metallic weapon parts. So just put a base coat of lead belcher on there. Again, the smokestacks and I guess the shiny bits of the weapons and also some of the chains. Got on those a little bit, and also anything else I thought might look kind of like a good metallic to give it a little pop there. I was originally going to do a kind of a darker color on these other metals, but I didn't think that would show very well, so I opted for a brass color on the rest of the weapon bits and also some of their armor bits. Honestly, I probably could have done a little bit more on the armor, but that's why I don't have box art. I just kind of picked out some things I thought looked good. Again, most of the main weapon bits. Up next was a Nuln Oil wash on all over the metallic bits. So smokestacks, weapon, all those get the wash. Just working everything with the crevices, make sure I touch all the points on that and get everything covered. Touch on the chains as well. Just really get everything a good shade. Next was Reichland Flesh Shade. This was for the spikes. Again, just trying to make sure I got all the washes in. And one thing, this is where the 0.2 nozzle really showed. There's a lot more crevices and detail on the 0.2 version than there were on the 0.4. Next up, Shining Silver, which I just did some little accents on, again, the lead belcher parts, just trying to highlight those and bring those out a little bit more, including the chains and some of the other metallic bits. So these are the finished parts. This is the 0.4 millimeter nozzle. Again, I think from a distance, this thing looks pretty well. I don't think caused any issues. 0.2, again, a little bit crisper on those spikes and some smokestack details. Layer lines are clearly evident, but gaming table, you might not notice that. So one thing I didn't cover is I did do a Coriolis green shade wash on these just to darken them up a little bit. I thought that made them look a little bit more Death Guardy.
Alright, so we've had some level of success with larger Plague Marine minis, but I don't play Plague Marines. I play Necrons. So let's see if we can find a model and print one of those.
For my Necron model, I opted for this Stormmouth, who's clearly very similar to the Stormlord for the Necrons. And I like that he had a lot of thin bits. There's a lot of chunky models out there that are really cool, but again, if I want to make a Necron, I want my thin little bits showcased like the standard. He came with this cool base, so I thought this was going to be a great opportunity to test out the 0.2 nozzle with this. Again, a great cape. Let's see how this prints with the 0.2 and see what we can do. Alright, so here are all the files for this Space Skeleton Warrior, for this Necron looking guy. Again, he's got a lot of the normal small parts that I'd be worried about if I was trying to print a small warrior like this. Very nice looking base. I think this cape's going to be interesting. But again, lots of small bits with the arm. This staff I think is going to be maybe a little bit tricky. Again, you can just see how kind of thin that is. Lots of little thin bits here, which is what I'm looking for. You know, I want to push this 0.2 millimeter to the best that I can to try to get a difficult result, to try to print something that I would normally just defer right to resin with. So if I can print something like this, I think I'll be pretty happy.
All right, so this is the printed head, and I swear no matter how many times I tried to print this, I could not get the stringing to stop, but I was able to clean this up. So this is one of the many heads I tried to print that did not really turn out well. And then this is the completed glued together model here. So I'm not going to paint it in this video, but you can see a lot of the detail did turn out pretty well. There's definitely little bits of remnant from either strings. You can see some up here where I cleaned it up, or just some artifacts from these really thin spots. But overall, between like the cloak and everything, I mean, it turned out pretty well. Granted, he's, you know, I'd say bigger than your average Necron, but as far as a lot of detail here, it's pretty good. And again, I think some of these little spots here I can probably clean up with a little bit more work before I paint him. But, you know, if I put this on a table from a distance, again, I don't think you'd know anything. I think the real difficulty is going to come when trying to paint some of these details. And just another note on the files is there were a few oddities just as far as gluing the torso to the legs and then the head to the rest. There's kind of some pieces that either seem like they're missing, or I don't think it was for my print job. I think just the files, there was kind of an odd spot there. But again, base looks really nice. I think, again, overall, I'm happy with this for a 0.2 millimeter nozzle, and considering kind of the headaches it went with on the other models, this one went a lot easier just based on that learning experience from those guys. Alright, so final conclusions. I don't think anyone expected a 0.2 millimeter nozzle to match anything you can get with resin, so I think that expectation was off the table to begin with. 0.2 versus 0.4, I did see a lot of differences, especially on the really fine detail. So if that's something really you're looking for, you want to stick with FDM miniatures, it might be worth the hassle. If you're just trying to get something on the tabletop and you're not super concerned about the painting and you really don't want to deal with the hassle, I would honestly just stick with the 0.4 if you're using an older machine. Again, I was using an Ender 3 for this video. If you're using something newer like a Bamboo A1 or something else, that might have different results. But for me, as far as moving forward, I'll probably stick with the 0.4 just to avoid some of the headaches with that smaller nozzle size. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe for more. Thanks.